Welcome back. Now we start the program in earnest. How would you describe our politics in 2012? That is the question we're really asking in this segment. We had elections in 3 or 4 states. We had in Ondo, we had in Delta. Edo, sorry.
Edo.
We had
Edo and Ondo.
That's right. And we had those elections, and by and large, they were described as
Free and fair.
fairly fair.
Half full or half empty?
Even I wonder what that means, but they were okay, compared to what we had before that. And we're also going to be looking at the internal politics of the parties, and of course we'll throw in the recent happenings of the deregistration of some political parties which have been adjudged inactive, in quotes.
Yes.
And to look at all this with us this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome the spokesman of the CNPP, Mr. Osita Ikechukwu. Okechukwu, good morning.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
We also have Mr. Babatunde Gbadamosi, who is a policy analyst. Good morning. And we have Mr. Ola Animashaun, who is a legal practitioner. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for joining us this morning. Let me begin with the neutral person. By the way, Mr. Ola Animashaun is also of the PDP. So I will swing to you, sir, being the apolitical animal in the studio this morning. Let's begin with Edo and Ondo. What do you think about those 2 elections compared to elections of 2011?
I felt that the Jonathan administration went all out to perhaps attempt to correct the impression that we've tended to go with as far as elections are concerned in Nigeria over the years, that it's always a matter of cash and carry, or break some heads and rig the elections.
Do or die.
Do or die, as it were. I thought the Edo elections, there was perhaps a bit of an overkill involved in that. Soldiers, police, everywhere. And it did give the feeling of a state being under siege during the elections. But that said, overall, it seemed on the surface that the elections were substantially free and fair. I hear that the PDP candidate is actually challenging the results of the elections due to irregularities in some places. And we're waiting on the courts, I think, on that one.
Yeah, during the campaigns, we did get the impression that it was going to be a fight to finish. So wouldn't you say, therefore, that the presence of those things you mentioned, the soldiers and all that, wouldn't you say that they were okay, in order, in light of
the threats leading up to the election itself?
Yes.
You might say that, but I also believe that perhaps a little more public information campaigns could help to dampen tensions.
Okay.
And get people talking to one another rather than talking at one another, and raising tensions to the point where we now have to start worrying about bloodshed and all that kind of stuff. At the Ondo elections, that was a rather interesting one, because one party seemed, to all intents and purposes, to be on the ascendancy. It appeared that they were going to sweep everything in sight. But in the end, it all turned, in my opinion, on their public campaign. There was a rally, and a personality in one of the political parties made some pronouncements that, in my opinion, ended up turning that election against that particular political party. And again, overall, it seemed like the Ondo election was, largely free and fair. I understand also that in that particular case there were hiccups here and there, and they're in court at the moment, as I understand. So at this point, I'll not be able to say much, for fear of being accused of acting sub judice.
Let me swing to those who actually had interests in those two elections.
Vested interests.
Osita, Ondo and Edo.
Let me say that for Edo State elections, we cannot actually say that it's free and fair. To the extent that the Electoral Commission failed, even the fact that it's only one election taking place at a time, to sufficiently acquaint the voters with the electoral materials. Sorry. And in some instances, it did not even allow, even the ones they had were unable to arrive early. In spite of the fact that they...
Sorry, I'm sorry to interject here. The question I would want to ask you is, did they eventually supply all of the materials or not? Because it seems like more often than not, we're very quick to say they didn't supply on time, so that meant that electoral materials delayed is electoral materials denied.
No, what we're trying to approximate, because in liberal democracy, democracy did not start today in Nigeria, it did not start today in the world. All liberal democracies, free and fair election first starts with the conduct of the election. Don't forget, even in April last year, during the National Assembly election, Jega woke up one mid-afternoon to say that he's cancelling an election because result sheets were not there in some polling units. And which a reasonable person, if he's not a little bit partisan, could have stopped on Thursday when he didn't get the materials. So we're trying to approximate. We're not saying we're going to behave exactly or perform exactly like the Americans or the Indians. But we're coming to a stage where the electoral umpire, what saved the day in Edo State is on Monoba Radio. If not for the above Benin, the election we are now praising could have been that case. But I don't want to go into that.
But by and large,
yes. In the rot existing in Nigeria, yes, is 90%. Because you are comparing rot.
90.
Yeah. You are comparing rot. We're doing a comparison inside the rot, not inside fairness of liberal democracy. If you say fairness of liberal democracy, one, in certain climes, electoral materials, like in India, you give electoral materials 2 weeks or 1 month before the time, and it's returned to the table because the opposition parties participate in the tendering process of the printers. They have their men with the ruling party in the printers table. So if you churn out serial number 2, number 3, they distribute it ahead because they know the numbers. But here, for unknown reasons, for those who do not want democracy to grow in Nigeria, for those who have not accepted that because you made more money today means your kids will be millionaires tomorrow or prominent tomorrow. They don't want to live to understand that this country can only reach whatever is called the 20 economies of the world in 2020 if the fundamentals of democracy is agreed upon. So let nobody tell us this happened, that happened, it was free and fair. Free and fair with 4,000 soldiers. Free and fair, where Benin people, wise people, had to hide inside their rooms. What was the voter turnout? These are the indices used in counting elections. Which I will come to Ondo, but for granted, let's not, because our democracy, say that because we are not Americans, we are not Indians, we are not Indonesians, we are not Ghanaians, that our democracy cannot grow. And the fundamental had been laid. The Ways Electoral Reform Panel came up with a genuine report. And a lot of people forgot that the PDP convoked that panel, selected their members, And luckily for the Nigerian people, the membership came out and said, our terms of reference is what are the legal framework that will give Nigeria a free and fair election. And one of the most important is still missing. They did not want to implement it. That if Osito Okechukwu wants to be an electoral commissioner, that he should be advertised. And if I come as somebody that met me in 1962 at the primary school, I say, the man stole our chalk, he can be. Look at all the high premium we leveled on Jega. He had crumbled. He had failed. But if he was audited, maybe somebody in KB who met Jega 40 years ago could have told us, hey, gentlemen, take it easy.
But it will be unfair
That's not the Jega,
to say
that
all of what credit we gave to Jega has crumbled. How would you
Why
arrive
wouldn't
at
it
that?
crumble?
Now, when
Let
you
me
look
tell
at
you what
the
the election is called.
we have had, yes.
Election is about confidence building.
Yes.
The social contract between the led or the voters and those being voted for, had it advanced?
The average Nigerian.
The confidence had not advanced.
I'm not a politician. And I have a little bit more interest in politics now compared to 2012. Compared to 2011, by virtue of the fact that all of what I've heard and what I've seen in 2012 by the election in Edo and in Ondo State point to the fact that the average Nigerian citizen is able to go out and vote, and his vote counted.
How I hope you were there that day. If you were at Edo State that day, you will know they didn't come out that way.
Well, we had
We
reporters
have the
there.
figures.
We had
We
They
reporters
didn't come out that
there.
way. What's the percentage of turnout?
No, we had reporters
In an
out there.
election
Yes.
that generated a lot of concern for the indigenous of Edo State, the turnout ended up to be less than 40%.
Well, that's not
And you didn't ask yourself why. It's a big index.
I would like to,
a big index.
point out that that's not necessarily such an important factor as far as democracy is concerned, because in more advanced democracies, in older democracies, you do find situations where during elections, only 20% of the electorate turn out. Even in the UK, that's happened before.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's called voter apathy,
Yes.
and you can't actually force people to come out and vote.
Yes.
Sometimes it happens in advanced democracies where there has been a sustained period of, ironically enough, okay, prosperity. If there's been a sustained period of prosperity, people tend not to be interested in politics. That's just how it is.
And please recall that Nigeria is coming out of the belief that their votes don't count. So why should they go out to vote?
Exactly.
Precisely.
Don't forget that.
Precisely.
Yes.
And that is why we should give credit now to Jega, INEC, and the people
For getting out 40%.
for even getting even if it is lower than that.
Yeah.
And this is the only time where those who lost in the election are not crying to high heavens. And we have to realize one thing again. You see, the election petition process too, the election petition, the petition process is also part of the electoral process. So we shouldn't think that once voting is over and the winner has been declared, then
Election is over.
that is the end of the process. No. The petition too is part of the process, because by the time participants, by the time they know that there's also that judicial process where they can ventilate whatever grievances they have, you see that election in Nigeria will become less violent, because you know that whatever happens on the field, if you have your facts, you have your figures, you can always go
Tribunal.
to the tribunal and sort it out. And our attitude of terming people, tagging them, people who now proceed to election tribunals, tagging them bad losers, I think we have to stop that also if you really want democracy to grow in Nigeria. Because to me, election does not really end after the winner has been declared.
Yeah, but we do have some bad losers. I mean, the case is clear. You have lost the election and you're running off to the tribunal. What for?
No, for whatever
I
it,
mean,
you
look
see,
at Obama and Mitt Romney. He conceded immediately. Congratulations. I wanted to take you people somewhere else, but you chose this man. I will work with him and I congratulate him. Immediately he conceded. He didn't run to some tribunal.
for you see, for whatever it is worth, you have to realize that there is a legal framework for the election, which is the Electoral Act. And that Electoral Act also contains provisions for people to ventilate whatever grievances they have. So you can now say, yes, we've done the election, somebody has won, the election has been free, perfect, and whatever. And I have one grievance or the other, and you now say because you think the election has been perfect, then I should keep quiet. Then you are not deepening the process.
If you have a grievance, then it's not perfect.
Yes, then it becomes a matter of perception. You are saying the generality of the people, they are saying, yes, the election has been very okay. Whereas my agents are now coming to me and now telling me, no, we witnessed somewhere they were stuffing ballot boxes,
Okay.
they were doing this, they were doing that.
Okay.
Or,
Okay.
So you should.
Now, let's talk about Ondo.
Yes.
I want your take about the Ondo elections.
I think for
Your party lost it.
I think for the Ondo election, the people actually emerged the winner. In the sense that when you look at the resources, yes, my party lost, but we put up a very good fight.
Okay.
An extremely good fight when you
His party, by the way, is the ruling party.
Yes,
PDP.
and that's a positive thing also for democracy in Nigeria, that the ruling party, with all resources and whatever are available, that they still contested election and they lost, and they are not making any whatever out of it. And when you look at the resources, it's like we started late, we didn't conclude our primaries on time and put the candidate on the field to run, but all the same, we still came second. Whereas there's a particular party, all the resources in the southwest, they dump it in Ondo, and and with all the noise and everything, they came a distant third.
Bad belly.
Well, I guess
That's why I said the people actually emerged winner in Ondo, and the Ondo election has really dealt a very big blow to Godfatherism to some extent in Nigerian politics. It's like yes, it's like the people coming out to say, yes, we know what is good for us. Notwithstanding the resources, the money that you're going to pump into the system, we're going to do what is right, and that is exactly what happened in Ondo.